from computer engineer to community activist. Tonight, we have a conversation with this year's APIQWTC Phoenix Award winner, Koko Lin. Welcome.
Thank you, David. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you back. That really has got to be one of my favorite gay acronyms, APIQWTC. And since I always mess up when I try to pronounce it, will you please pronounce the whole title for me?
It's Asian Pacific Islander Queer Women and Transgender Community.
Thank you, APIQWTC. I got it.
Yeah.
Now, you've been on the show before talking about the work that APIQWTC does. Now you're back as an honoree. Why did you get this award, and did it surprise you?
I am still shy about it, but I'm very humble and very honored that they are giving me this award. It means a lot to me. Particularly, this is actually for someone who had contributions or, well, actually a lot of involvement with API community. And we have, in the past, we have given to 9 different awardees like Trinity O'Donnell, Crystal Jane, who have been in the show, and Dorina Wong, who have been involved in the movement of gay community. So it's amazing how I am in the same platform with all the same people.
Right. Yeah. You know, and we talked about this when you were on the show before, and because my husband and I have a number of colleagues and clients both in China and outside of China in the Asian community, I have come to learn as, you know, an old white guy, that the process of coming out in the Chinese community is different and sometimes difficult. Does it kind of stun you that you're here getting a gay award as a Chinese lesbian?
Right, right. I wouldn't even imagine myself to be in this space right here, because I knew about myself when I was 5 or 6, and so that is like 40 years ago. But for the whole time, I just wanted to be quiet and not telling anybody about my sexual orientation. But 20-some years ago, I just got out of college as a software engineer and thinking about, you know, meeting more friends, particularly just, you know, got done with a relationship and I wanted to meet more people. So I started to get involved with the community works and just to volunteer from organization to organizations, and, you know, started with self-help for elderlies and move on to like API Wellness and even volunteer at Frameline. So, and to be able to be in that arena and meet with really incredible, amazing activists and see how they do their things. And I go, oh my God, I want to be like them. I wanted to be one day to do all these amazing things and have impact on people's lives. So it was a very fortunate part of myself, which I was able to be in that and have mentors that actually helped me out. Do
you see yourself more as a leader for the lesbian community or for the Chinese American community, women's community?
That's a good question. No, I would think it's more of a API LGBT community. Yeah. Oftentimes, the part that I wanted to bring back home, which is, for example, Chinatowns or Asia, and that's usually the part that I got hurt. Oftentimes that we wanted to speak on panels in Chinatowns, and turns out people be shouting at us.
Meaning shouting homophobic comments.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, and then there are people, particularly in Prop A, that time when there are people who come to us, and my daughter at the time was only about 4 years old, and say, we were not going to vote for you. And these are our own people who actually are, meaning Asian people, who actually are against us and would not be supportive.
That must have been hurtful.
Oh, yeah. Because we've been to all these places where people have no idea who they are, come toward us and say, oh my gosh, this is a cute family. Where in Chinatown, you get a different story.
Yeah, or maybe in Chinatown they'll come to you and say, you have a cute daughter, where's your husband?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to China with my husband Alfredo, and he asked his Chinese tutor, who's also Taiwanese, he said, so what's the word for what David is? She went, well, there isn't one. He said, well, no, I mean, there must be a word for gay in China. Well, yes, but we don't like to use it, it's not polite. Right. He's like, well, then can I just say he's my husband? She said, no, you don't want to say that. He's like, well, what do I say? She says, like, well, you do what a Chinese would do, you just don't say anything.
Right.
And I thought they were kidding. And I remember the first time we were in China during what would have been Gay Pride, I said, well, was there a Gay Pride parade? And our 2 gay friends who were there said, well, no, there's no Gay Pride parade in even Shanghai. I said, well, why not? Because of homophobia? He's like, no, just Chinese don't like parades, big gatherings of people. Do you think that's part of now the bias, if you think it still exists, against being openly gay in Asian countries, that the idea of just that we don't like crowds of people fomenting dissent?
Right, that was the case. But over the last 2-3 years, I've seen a lot of things change. I've been trying to visit China or Taiwan several times a year. because visiting family, that was one major reason. But I also do see things are progressively changing, particularly in Taiwan, that they're trying to put together a bill and having people to be able to, same-sex couples to be able to get married. And they just recently was defeated so they won't be even to be on the bill, but at the same time, that was actually a big step coming from.
Well, the fact that it actually had to be introduced.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that reminded me that in 1996, we were trying very hard, trying to just have a contingent in a Chinese New Year parade as a gay contingent, and we applied for multiple years and it got shut down, and they all said that they were not welcome, and so to a point that that. By trying that a few times, certainly at some point that people might change their mind. And we're seeing a lot in our own community where in my daughter's school that the parents actually have different idea about us. And oftentimes it's just their fear that actually stopped them for wanting to know. But once they know us and we're very embraced, we're being welcomed to their families and get invited to weekend dinners and so on. So I think that things might change in one day.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the first time that an LGBT group was welcomed into a Chinese New Year parade. You would have thought that the Hibernians in Boston and New York would have gotten the message that, we probably make the parades really fabulous. There's no reason to ban us.
Right. In fact, our contingent has always been fabulous. The most colorful contingents that you can imagine.
Yeah, the gayest dragons on earth.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I was teasing, from computer engineer to community activist, but you really have had a varied career. Now, do you consider yourself more of a professional, a techie, or are you a full-time activist?
I never actually imagined myself as an activist, but I try to.
Although everyone else says you are.
Well, I'm trying to commit myself as much as I can, but a lot of time I do it for sometimes selfish reason. For example, I have been more involved now with Megan's schools, which is my daughter, and as a treasurer of PTA, I get to meet many families and people in different economic backgrounds, and I actually noticed that there's actually a lot more issues beyond just being gay. There are a lot of things that we can do better for the California school system. But then at the same time, there are actually still, little things here and there, and people don't know how to call us. Is it mom or mama or mommy? And so little things would help them to understand and get to know us better.
So you think it's partly our responsibility now in 2014?
Well,
we've been telling the non-gay community for years, you need to get to know us. Maybe we need to get to know the straight community too?
I think we should reach out too. I never said that we were just going to sit there for people to come and say hello to us. I think oftentimes that it is my job to go out there and tell people about us, and at the same time, hopefully that's mutual.
Yeah, I remember something that I once read in a column back in Washington, D.C. by a woman named Miss Manners. She wrote a society column, or a social manners column. And someone wrote in one day and said, Miss Manners, and she wrote this long letter about why she was feeling the way she did. 2 gay men had just moved in next door to her, and they had invited her to come over for a housewarming party. And she said, so finally, when I meet them, what do I say? Confused in Duluth. And Miss Manners wrote by, Dear Confused, quotes, how do you do, and how do you do? It's not a big deal meeting a gay couple.
Right.
Do you still think, though, that there's some gay people, and now that we are part of PTAs and parades, that it behooves gay people to reach out the hand and say, how do you do to non-gay people?
Well, I think oftentimes that people still have a little bit of hesitation on trying to meet you somewhere in the middle, but then we'll see. We'll let it be. See how fate takes us, because oftentimes that you can only do this much and see what turns out.
Now I know you've got some very strong feelings and experiences about DOMA. What do you think about the decisions of the last few months? Could you have predicted it? Would you?
No, not at all. And every time we read about it from the paper, we cried. I mean, me and my partner, we often say, let's go over there to get married. Let's go to another state and get another marriage license. It's almost like collecting stamps, but to a point that it comes so uneasily that over these so many decades that people had fought so hard to get where we are, things wasn't, I mean, I don't want to take it as for granted. I think oftentimes the younger generation think, oh my gosh, it's just going to happen regardless. But without these people, nothing would happen. So I would actually encourage that people still continue to come out to people, and oftentimes it's the personal story that touch people's hearts instead of, you know, going out there and just, you know, get married. There's actually a lot of stories behind it that is more outstanding and incredible than anything else.
Now, you are raising your family in the East Bay in Oakland.
Correct.
I did a show earlier this month and was talking to a woman, Miss Chris, who works with a lesbian group in Oakland, and she said something to me that I haven't had independently verified, but she said that Oakland has has per capita more lesbians than any large city in California. Is that possible and true?
It's possible, because a lot of our friends are just around the corners. We will drive around and borrow some soy sauce if we want. Seriously.
That's the APIQWTC version of going and borrowing a cup of milk.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Oakland is a hot lesbian center.
I think so. Yeah, and in fact, in Megan schools, we actually have several lesbian couples who have their kids going to the same school, same grade. It's fabulous that we play tennis together, and there's a lot of people who are just in the neighborhood. I mean, within the, I would say 1 or 2 miles radius, and so it's a wonderful support group where I feel like I belong here.
Now, the APIQWTC Phoenix Award, how many years has this been given?
10 years. This
10
is
years.
the 10th.
So you're the 10th anniversary recipient of the Phoenix Award.
Yeah.
And you said that you feel humbled by it. Do you have your speech ready?
Not yet. But I think I'm going to make it funny.
Think you're going to make it funny?
Yeah.
And who's going to be there besides your wife and children? Any other members of your family going to be there?
My sister, my niece, and many friends who will be there celebrating it with me.
So for you as a Chinese American and now open lesbian, this award is bringing together a bunch of circles.
That's right.
Anything in closing you'd like to say about getting the award, or just in general, about being a PTA mom?
It's interesting. It's very different from what I think about the PTA will look like. You're dealing with a bunch of straight, crazy moms out there who...
As opposed to just the lesbian Chinese crazy mom,
yes,
right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So it's more work than you expected.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank
Congratulations.
you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Next up, our conversation with Robert Oakes, longtime political veteran here in California, and now the executive director of the California Mental Health Directors Association. We'll be right back.